from his first full-length feature, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, to the newest attractions at Walt Disney World. Walt Disney is one of the American men who is most remembered in today's society. He paved his unique way to fame through animated cartoons that changed the ways people were entertained during the early to mid-20th century. From the depressing failures to the plentiful successes, Disney's career as an animator is a bumpy ride of ups and downs as he creates a vision for a future that is truly magical. In 1928, Walt Disney created the world-famous cartoon character Mickey Mouse, a puzzle piece fitting into his unforgettable legacy. Walt Disney's career as an entrepreneur, animator, and film producer changed the world because he broke the barriers of entertainment with his animated cartoons and films in the 1920s, during the post-war depression of World War I, and during and after World War II. His legacy still lives on today in his theme park creations and ever-growing animation studio. Our story begins in the Roaring Twenties, a time period known for innovations in lifestyle and economy, and most of all, huge advancements in technology. Walt, who was born in Chicago in 1901, lived in a farm in Marceline, Missouri for the majority of his childhood, and learned the principles of hard work. Even with chores filling his days, he was still able to run away into a fantasy world of his own when he drew pictures of the farm animals. Drawing was what brought him happiness, even during his days as an ambulance driver in France during World War I. This led for him to become an apprentice illustrator for a catalog and commercial agency in Kansas City after the war. This small first cartooning job would soon prove significant, for this is where Walt met his friend and fellow animator, Ub Iwerks. Together, Walt and Ub broke off from the catalog agency and started their own company that manufactured shorts for television called Laugh-O-Grams. These were essential parts of livelihood in the Depression during and after World War I. They dealt with topics such as shorter skirts and police corruption, which was unheard of at the time. And instead of simple animation, Disney and Ub created complicated cartoons, touching base with updated stories such as Puss in Boots, which turned out to be very popular. Disney's ambitious nature caused him to break many barriers of what animated cartoons were like in this time period. One of these new cartoons that was especially memorable was called Alice's Wonderland. It depicted a real-life girl in a make-believe cartoon world. This was a major innovation for television and entertainment in the 1920s because no one had ever seen anything like it. Unfortunately, funds ran out quickly, and the Laugh-O-Grams company went bankrupt. The unfinished ideas of Alice's Wonderland were temporarily put away. Walt's older brother, Roy Disney, had experience in financial obligations and had recently moved to Los Angeles, California. In search of a fresh new start, Walt followed suit, and in 1923 convinced his brother to help him. Walt wrote a letter to Margaret J. Winkler, a New York film distributor whom he had met once in Kansas City. This was a huge gamble, for Disney had no money, no staff, and no studio. However, Winkler replied saying she loved Disney's old works of Alice's Wonderland, and she'd be willing to pay $1,500 for every short Disney made. An elated Disney took the offer and opened the original Disney Brothers studio. He acquired many new artists, including his old friend Ub Iwerks. Despite this great new success, Walt continued to take expensive risks of expansion and improving quality, and the studio was almost always in debt. This, however, soon paid off, for he rose above other animation companies that provided mediocre cartoons for the sake of not spending too much money. Walt decided to break many barriers by taking chances, and the vast difference of quality in Disney's shorts showed that it was the right way to go. With things suddenly going so well for Walt Disney and his company, it seemed their troubles were over. But they weren't. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was initially created by Walt Disney because of a contract made with Margaret J. Winkler's husband, Charles Mintz. After Winkler retired, she left the company to Mintz, who told Disney that the public needed yet another new thing, new plots in all cartoon shorts with new characters. Within hours, Walt had dreamt up the main character Oswald and planned innovative, comedic plots for the new shorts. These modern shorts played all over the nation and became extremely popular. However, despite the artistic and financial success of Oswald, trouble was brewing. Mintz and Disney began to disagree about the future of Oswald cartoons. Disney believed they were being made too quickly and without much extra thought or experiment. Mintz, on the other hand, insisted that he was paying Walt too much money for the shorts and that the price be lowered. The objections reached their peak, and Mintz used his contract with Walt to take away the rights to Oswald. Despite this major setback, Walt was ready to come back with even more effort than before. He borrowed some money to produce a whole new series, with the star of the show being a whole new character just as appealing as Oswald. This is where Mickey Mouse was born. Ub Iwerks got right to work on designing the look of this new character, and soon the first Mickey Mouse short was released. But surprisingly, Walt made a sudden halt in production and spent time on a new Mickey Mouse short that would triumph over all others. It was inspired by the recent movie The Jazz Singer, which was the first movie with sound. Walt wanted his new shorts to have as much impact as possible, so he started production of what would be the first animated short with sound in film history. It was an expensive and extremely difficult job, but Walt persevered, and in 1928, the Walt Disney Animation Studio released Steamboat Willie. After the brilliant successes of the new Mickey Mouse shorts, Disney was known across the map for his animations, and he was ready to keep climbing. He started composing a series of shorts called Silly Symphonies that showcased sound and music with his animations. This, like many of Disney's other ideas, was risky and had never been done before, but yet again, victory was his, and critics praised his work as original and awe-inspiring. The silly symphony called Flowers and Trees was especially significant because it was the first TV short in history that used Technicolor. In 1939, the Walt Disney Animation Studio decided to stop production of Silly Symphonies and keep up with advancing technology by making full-length feature films with unique plots. This resulted in the classic movies we still celebrate today, such as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, along with many others. These animated movies were groundbreaking. At the premiere of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, William Wilkerson, the founder and publisher for the newspaper The Reporter, described Walt Disney as the only real genius in the business. He raved, "Disney creates ideas that are different, digs deep into his own bank account to finance those ideas, and brings pictures to the screen that all people can understand and be entertained with." Things were looking good for the studio, but Walt still wasn't satisfied. Deep in his mind, he had a vision, a place where people of all ages, locations, and backgrounds could come together, enjoy his work, and spend quality family time. And this place would be called Disneyland. During construction, Walt Disney stated, "With the technical know-how of American industry and the creative imagination of the Disney organization, I'm confident we can build a living showcase that more people will talk about and come to than any other area in the world." This shows how optimistic he was about building this gigantic, expensive, amazing attraction, and his optimism didn't go to waste. On July 17, 1955, one of Disney's biggest creations became a reality, the opening of a theme park made of pure joy, magic, and everything Disney. It was more of a success than Walt could have hoped for. Disneyland, and its expanded Florida version, Walt Disney World, are still today iconically known as being the happiest places on Earth. Disneyland gets an average of 44,000 guests per day. It is a global center for endless youth, creativity, and imagining that there is no such thing as the impossible. So how did all of this come to be? How did a man struggling to make money from a bankrupt company become a well-known legend and, by the end of his career, win 26 Academy Awards? How did he start with nothing and yet come out on top with everything he ever wanted to achieve? By taking risks and making the right decisions in difficult choices, Walt Disney and his company rose to great heights, and Walt Disney created a golden age of animation and television. The man of ideas changed the world, breaking barriers some didn't even know existed, and creating things no one had seen or heard before. He knew of no barriers when pursuing his dreams. Though Walt Disney himself is long gone, his spirit still lives on in the hearts of his American viewers, a legacy passed down from generation to generation.